You ever wonder why? You ever wonder why? Said the lady with the long legs in the lawn chair. She liked the strings on my guitar neck and my blonde hair. I write about her thighs in my latest lines. I remember her eyes when I asked her why. Why would you pay for this apartment you don't belong in? You take the shit from all your bosses and all your boyfriends. I guess I get surprised when you let it slide, but it's no business of mine how you waste your time. Yeah, don't crash, don't text, don't renew your tags. No sex, no sleep, just that job. I bet you miss what you had. You can't get no sleep at night. Do you ever wonder why everyone is out to get you every day? Do you question anything? How many warning signs till it hits you, darling? Gravity's your friend. You fall out of touch sometime, but your history calls you back to it again. Too many factors to be sure, so many reasons to think twice, and nobody asked you to before. But do you ever wonder why?
Hey, what's up? I just needed a quick smoke, and yeah, welcome to my neighborhood's designated smoking space. A little unboxing, even. And well, I just figured since I'm out here, I might as well share a couple of tips about cinematography and specifically photography for today's episode. I've been doing digital art for many years now. At first it was about learning, but somewhere across the way I just kind of stopped caring. I didn't really care about my growth, and I just kind of started coasting. I didn't really have any desire to excel in my own field. Now though, I would give anything to elevate my art form and expressions. And it all started when I took this picture here. It's kind of nice out today, huh? After I took this, something tugged at me. Something lured me in cinematically that I just couldn't quite put my finger on. Then, I took more pictures and I made more pictures that I liked. I made more content that pleased me. I kind of still couldn't figure it out. What do I like about some of the pictures I take and not the other ones? Then it finally hit me. All of my hobbies, writing my book, filmmaking, photography, drawing, magic, cardistry, they're all mediums for storytelling. I realized the connection in my pictures was not really whether the lighting was cool enough or the location that I found was cool enough, but the emotion that each picture was expressing. It all comes down to who you are and what you're feeling. And I finally understood why some of the pictures that I took spoke to me while others didn't. It was because the emotion in that picture related to me in that moment, or just truly finally showed what I was feeling inside. Cinematic does not mean high budget or good looking. It means to convey emotion to your audience properly in a way that relates to them. And that's the thing. People get too carried away with, what if my film doesn't affect people? Well, it will. It has to affect the right person though. This film that I'm making may not be for everybody, but some of you need it. I personally struggle with my mental health a lot. And I discovered recently that a lot of the pictures that I like to make evoke certain emotions, certain feelings or thoughts. Loneliness, existentialism, maybe a dream world that I can escape into. Contemplation. And a little new thing I guess I'm kind of making is fuck off, or like fuck society. So here's my take. I think the way to get a cinematic image is to figure out what you're trying to convey before you figure out how you're trying to convey it. Finding what kind of emotions you like to shoot can also help you narrow down what your style is. So keep that in mind as you're out here shooting. Think about your process that you have right now. What do you like about your process, and what do you like about your results? And then focus on those two things and try and make it fun and stylistic, the way that you want it to be, the way that you planned the outcome in your head. With this realization I had, I want to talk about today's topic, portraits. And it looks like I'm out, so let's finish this somewhere else.
You know that this is no fake. Can't help but come a little closer. Yeah, now you acting like you don't care. You know I need that shit like closure. And how'd you know that I'd like that? Little attitude, little talk right back. Yeah, like 24/7 in my landslide. You know it feels like late nights, catching vibes, sink through the floor. It feels like summertime, lose my mind out of control. It feels like it feels like, you know it feels like late nights, catching vibes, sink through the floor. It feels like summertime, lose my mind out of control. It feels like
All right, so let's talk about portraits, guys. How do we take a good portrait of someone? As I mentioned before, I've done this a lot. I specialize in doing portraits, so I would love to give you guys some tips and tricks to help you guys get better portraits as of today. The first thing I want to cover with you is framing. How do we actually frame someone's body to make the subject matter look interesting? Well, there's a couple of things that we can do. We can do a close-up completely on the face so that there's nothing else. This creates a very claustrophobic or headspace kind of feel for your photographs. So that's one kind of framing that you can do. Next is have their shoulders pop out of the frame just a little bit. So if we were taking a picture of me coming up, maybe we could do something like this. And look at that. I have my shoulder popping out just a little bit on one of the sides. Just by positioning the model a little bit, you can change the dynamic look of your frame and your posing. So by having one shoulder out and under and hiding, it creates something more dynamic. Can't really explain it, it just does. The next framing choice that we have is full body, where you have the person's whole body in the picture. A problem I see a lot in photography, though, when it comes to portraits is that when people take a full body, they'll chop it off at the feet or like just above the ankle, and it looks kind of weird. If you're going to do a full body, go all the way and make sure their entire body is in the frame. Reasons you might do this is to show the full character or show their surroundings even a little bit more and give them context for that picture. Another kind of like mid shot, if you push in on someone, the framing I see that's really weird is people cutting right under the ankles. And this is very unflattering. If you take the picture a little bit higher, just above the knee, then it makes a more pleasing look, and their legs don't look as weird. They look longer and more flattering, so always crop just above the knee, not just under it. This also creates a more pleasing image for people to look at, so those are my tips for framing your subject, but let's talk about creating your portraits compiled, all of it together. Let's talk about that. Well, first let's stick to basics. Let's not forget about negative space. Something that you can do is create the background to be pretty much empty and isolate your subject, as you guys kind of saw in that, kind of like that picture with Emma where the sun was rising in the back and the sky was really bright and blown out, and that created negative space for my picture in episode 3. Rule of thirds. We talked about it, folks. Don't forget about rule of thirds. If you guys are ever in doubt or don't know how to compose the frame too well, just pull out your rule of thirds and start going to basics. It's always a good foundation to fall back on, and they produce good quality pictures, so don't doubt the power of the basics. When it comes to taking photography out in the day with natural lighting, you have to ask yourself what kind of lighting you're looking for. Something in the shade or something completely in the sunlight. If you start to mix and match these hard shadows and really bright brights, you're not going to have a very dynamic picture. It's going to have too much contrast, blowing out the highlights and destroying the shadows. That's not something you want. You want something kind of even. And then you can add your contrast later in post. So with this light, make sure you're chasing it, or if you're looking for some shade, to have enough light under that shade to take your portrait. But then, on top of this, don't forget that you have that option to backlight your subject, like I talked about in that last picture with Emma. The sun was right behind her and made this flattering image of the blown out negative space behind her, and creating this very hazy, dreamy look behind her hair and her body. So don't forget about backlighting, because it's also really pretty and just, I don't know, it's a different kind of vibe than most pictures at sunset. And of course, please do not forget about your camera settings. Make sure that you're exposing properly for the image. So those are, again, the basics of taking pictures, of taking portraits. How do you stand out with your portraits? One way that spiced up my pictures instantly was just posing in weird ways. Find a pose that you haven't seen before, or just a pose that you think is extremely dynamic or fills the frame in a fun way. Start spicing up your poses, and because that's the subject of your portrait, it'll spice up the portrait. So give it some thought. Look up some Google images or some photographers that you already follow on social media, and check out what kind of poses they do, how they get that feeling, that emotion that they're going for, and why they chose that pose to do it. By deconstructing what we like and what we see day to day, it can help us find our style, our pacing, our process, and our results. This may seem obvious, but please don't be boring and try different angles. Try a low angle, a high angle, a Dutch angle. Try taking a couple of steps back and framing your image maybe more at chest level, and see how that works. How does that look? By engaging these different angles and different distances from the subject, we can create a new vibe. So experiment, play with it, try and figure out how this is helping create the mood that you had in mind before shooting. Another thing that I wanted to mention, now that we've talked about light and composing your image, I wanted to say, don't be afraid of hard light. I know we've talked a lot about diffusing and like making soft lights to hit your skin better, but let's be real, not all light is soft. Some cinematic looks are created using hard light, so don't just discount it entirely. You can create such specific moods with hard lighting. Morning light pouring in through your window is probably a hard light most of the time. So if you're trying to mimic morning light, that's probably what you're going to want to do, is make hard lighting. If you're taking an album of portraits for one single person, try taking random pictures of your scenery without the subject in it, or like just close-ups of their shoes that are really cool, or their jewelry on their hands. This creates context and attention to detail that help that album feel complete and total, and like you were kind of there. Now, it's easy to follow what other people have already done, or popular trends that everyone is using for their films. What's hard is trying to think of a composition that's weird or unique or interesting, or just something someone has not thought of yet. Find ways to make your shot more fascinating, more nuanced, I should say. Try framing your subject with lighting or cool patterns or buildings or structures or statues or a cool wallpaper you found. Just try and get crazy and creative, and don't let things get in the way of your dream picture. Try and find fun, cool ways to solve the problem. Challenge yourself, or what is this really all for? You're not going to get better. Next, we're going to talk about capturing an emotion with the portrait, and the best way to do this is to get to know the model that you are doing it for. So this is specifically for something like profile pictures for somebody, and they want a way to encapsulate who they are within the picture. So if we got a gamer or like a magician, then we should probably have them doing something with cards and doing a shuffle or something to show that this person is a magician and that they do cardistry. This way, the portrait is of them and what they do, and that is kind of who they are. If they're super obsessed with coffee and playing bridge on Saturdays, take them to a coffee shop, take their picture with them shuffling a deck of cards, getting ready for their friends to come play bridge. And my last tip is, as I mentioned previously, is to look at the people that you aspire to take pictures like. What makes your favorite pictures interesting? What makes you linger and stay and want to look at the rest of the picture in detail? start studying how you can do that in your own way. For this video, we talked a lot about style and kind of like branding yourself. This is going to be the first out of 3 episodes that we're going to be talking about your style. Okay, so today we're talking about portraits. Next time we're talking about product photography. And then we're going to very specifically hone in on how to make your style. Find out who you are and what you do to make your emotions, your expressions stand out in your art. It's a hard thing to find your style, and sometimes some other people have a similar or the same kind of style as you. But that doesn't mean that it's not unique as long as you start expressing from what's in here and getting creative so that you're not the same as everyone else. So that's it for my tips on portrait photography. Thank you guys for joining me today. It's been a pleasure. It's been awesome. Don't forget to hit the like button if this helped you out. Hit the subscribe and bell notification so you guys can get notified anytime we make more videos like this. And I'll see you guys in the next episode of VIDEOCHILD.
You know it feels like late nights, catching vibes, sink through the floor. It feels like summertime, lose my mind out of control. It feels like